Hi there, my name is Sarah Jane Shields, and I'm pleased to be sharing my research on Properzia de Rossi with you today. But before I begin, I just want to take a moment to thank Dr. Mulvaney for all of her help during my research process. Her insight was extremely valuable, and it is so appreciated. Properzia de Rossi, Femininity, Fruitstone Sculpting, and Fine Art. Properzia de Rossi, an Italian Renaissance sculptor, was a rarity among pre-modern artists. Very few female artists are noted in discussions of the Italian Renaissance, yet she has been recognized for her sculptural mastery since the early 16th century. Though she was accomplished in sculpting marble like other renowned artists, she had an affinity for miniature carvings, which are unlike any other pieces of her time. Analyzing these works illuminates Properzia's personal identity as a female sculptor and highlights the harmonious union of different art forms while challenging the notion that fine art manifests only through painting and large-scale sculpture. Paired with decorative elements, her miniature sculptures create artistic anomalies. Though Properzia's status as a woman is only one aspect of her identity, its significance cannot be untangled from her work. It impacted the opportunities available to her as an artist, as well as how she created her work. Properzia de Rossi was born in 1490 and lived a short but full life in Bologna, Italy. She became ill and passed away in 1530, but during her lifetime, she created artworks so impressive that she caught the attention of Pope Clement VII and Giorgio Vasari. Due to a lack of documentation, Properzia is somewhat of an enigma to the world today. However, her pieces leave behind valuable insight on her distinct artistry. It is also fortunate that her skill captured Vasari's interest, for much of the existing literature has taken information from his account of her life. Expanding on this, Marjorie Auck writes that Vasari's information, quote, made visible the otherwise mysterious phenomenon of the woman artist, end quote. The circulating knowledge and documentation of Properzia's artistic accomplishments provides a window into the life of the artist herself, but also the female Renaissance artist in general. Although Giorgio Vasari's work should not be understood as fact, it is notable that Properzia de Rossi is the only woman that he covers in his seminal work. Actually, he designates an entire chapter to her name. Though short, it is quite extensive in comparison to Properzia's female contemporaries, who only received brief mentions. Vasari emphasizes that Properzia is both educationally and domestically accomplished, reflecting the expectation that proper women should know how to maintain a household. He also makes a point to note her physical appearance, quote, this woman was very beautiful and played and sang better than any other woman of the city in her day, end quote. When discussing her male counterparts, the writer does not bother to include such details, for they were of little interest to his readers at the time of the book's publication. Although these little remarks are now read with a negative air due to social changes around gender, there is no negativity in Vasari's commentary. In fact, his words are overwhelmingly positive. His account of the artist's life can be viewed as a celebration of her work and even femininity as a whole. Mentioning Properzia's artwork and relating it to other accomplished female artists at the time uncovers a reverence that would not be expected from such a prominent individual. Vasari concludes the chapter declaring, and truly women have excelled indeed in every art to which they set their hand. It is significant that so many centuries ago, such a positive, inclusive comment would be made from a prominent figure. Properzia's unique career opportunities most likely have to do with where and when she lived. She was born when the Renaissance was in full bloom. It is poetic that she lived and died at almost the exact times that the High Renaissance began and ended. During this time, quality art was appreciated and in high demand. Bologna was getting redone in terms of art, and this required artists. Perhaps the city was more open to commissioning female artists because of the amount of work that needed to be done. Regardless, the city certainly benefited by creating opportunities for female artists. Despite this newfound openness, Properzia remains somewhat confined due to her status as a woman. Vasari states that her husband acted as the intermediary when gaining approval on the work on the facade of San Petronio. This opportunity gave way to her arguably most famous piece, Joseph and Potiphar's Wife. It is unfortunate to consider that this sculpture, which is often considered to be her greatest work, may not have been achieved without the help of her husband. Even so, the achievement should not be placed solely in his hands. This opportunity definitely would not have been available to Properzia if she did not complete such impressive miniature sculptures beforehand, which both prepared her for the project and gained her respect and admiration within the art community. Spanning over 15 inches in length and nearly 9 inches in width, The Grassi family crest bears delicate weight. The silver filigree coat of arms is a net of swirling tendrils that twist and spiral into one another in graceful, gentle swoops. Thicker twisted ropes outline the contours as thinner ones take up the majority of the space. Looking closer, delicate rosettes speckle the surface, blooming outward. The top resembles a crown, which is attached by 3 small chains to a lower chamber that resembles an eagle with its wings spread apart. The filigree is set in feathered patterns, radiating from the center cross and coming into sharp points at the wingtips. 2 eagle's feet spread outward below, making a strong horizontal and ending in sharp claws. The filigree grows into a tail that fizzes out into separate silver feathers that radiate in all directions but upward. 11 miniature intaglios are set throughout the crest in symmetry. The red, jewel-like rounds bear engraved portraits of apostles in almost impossible detail. On the reverse of the stones are 11 portraits of female saints who were included by no mistake, given Properzia's female status. At the center lies a wooden starotek, a reliquary of the Holy Cross, which contains 4 translucent rectangular chambers surrounding Christ's portrait, which sits above a portrait of the Virgin. The reliquary, which likely once contained a relic, is the focal point from which each tendril grows out of, drawing attention to it while emitting from it. Though no larger than the palm of one's hand, the carved cherry stone pendant is abundant in substance. A golden laurel leaf with emerald green enamel encircles the cherry stone, which is held in place by a thin golden rod. At the top of the rod begins a small ring from which the pendant can be hung, adorned with optic white enamel. Looking below, 4 purple diamonds mark the laurel crown in perfect symmetry. Their purple sheen strikingly complements the deep green enamel. The diamonds are square but set so that their corners point above and below, making the work slightly more dynamic. A charming single cut leaves a strong bevel that adds just enough shimmer to the pendant without taking away from the focal point. From the bottom of the rod hangs a single pearl, completing the repetition of spheres that compose a harmonious piece. Within the crown sits the culmination, a cherry stone carving from which over 100 individual faces protrude. Because the stone has no color other than its earthy red hue, its sole means of decoration is form. Though the laurel crown and jewels add ornamentation that enhance the stone, its unthinkable intricacy needs no accessories. The naked eye can hardly make out each individual face, challenging the mind and beckoning the viewer within touching distance. A magnifying lens is required to behold the faces in all their detail, causing the audience to wonder how in the world such an artistic feat could be made, especially so many centuries ago. The difference in scale between the crest and pendant can be viewed in this slide. It is notable that Properzia is able to use her sculptural expertise in both artworks, despite their great difference in purpose and form. The presence of fruitstone sculpture in both pieces speaks to the medium's utility and ability to be used in alternate ways. Though fruitstone carving is a bit of a quandary due to a lack of literature on the subject, the practice has been detected in various cultures throughout the world as early as the 10th century. There is no certainty of how Properzia was introduced to the art form or whether or not she came up with it on her own. Vasari attributes her employment of her technique to her ready and inventive wit and relates the tedious task to her patience. He draws connections between this approach and her female status, implying that her femininity is a key means to her success at fruitstone carving, an extremely tedious task that does indeed require patience. It is important to note, of course, that patience is a requirement of all successful artists, regardless of sex. Vasari's emphasis on Properzia's femininity and her approach uncovers stereotypes regarding gender at the time, which did indeed impact Properzia's experience as a Renaissance artist and should not be viewed as fact. Perhaps Properzia chose this method because it was all she had available, not solely because she was a patient and skilled individual. Lack of opportunity for female artists may have been a motivating factor in Properzia's employment of fruitstone carving because the materials were much more accessible than the tools required for traditional sculpture. All she would have needed were the pits themselves and simple tools to carve them, such as knives, chisels, or files. The artist was eager to work with marble for the project at San Petronio, so perhaps the decision to work with these materials was a means to express herself and create an impressive portfolio. Showing off was necessary to gain commissions, and carving full figures and faces at the almost microscopic level is undeniably impressive. Properzia's miniature sculptures are able to coexist with multiple other art forms simultaneously, resulting in pieces that are distinct from the most famous Renaissance artworks. This harmonious amalgamation of crafts fosters a fine art experience that deviates from the typical. Filigree and enamel are utilized in the Grassi family crest and the carved cherry stone pendant. Filigree involves soldering thin wires of precious metals into an openwork design. Though Properzia did not carry this technique out in the works being analyzed, the technique is employed to a great degree in the Grassi family crest. It is possible that Giacomo and Andrea Gessi completed the metalwork, but this is not certain. So the silver design acts as a frame for Properzia's intaglios, yet is a piece of artwork itself. The filigree serves both functional and aesthetic purposes, proving to be an extremely useful method of design. The intimate partnership between filigree and miniature sculpture creates an efficacious piece that is a delight to look upon and establishes a reverence for the family for which it is made. As seen in the carved cherry stone pendant, enamel also proves to be quite useful. During this process, powdered glass is fused to metal by a heat source. In this case, bright green glass is melded on gold to create a laurel crown design. Like the filigree eagle, the golden crown acts as a visual frame for the sculpture. This frame is also a piece of artwork, elevating the already impressive cherry stone carving into an even more distinguished piece. Properzia's artworks push against the confines of what is considered to be fine art because of their inherent grandeur, which is ironically accomplished at a very small scale. Her fame alone proves this to be true, for Vasari chose her to represent the female artists of his day, and the Pope himself wished to meet her. Though her work in marble meets the criteria of traditional high Renaissance art, her more unconventional works challenge the criteria. While her fruit stone sculptures are small in scale, they evoke just as much amazement and veneration as a traditional painting or life-size sculpture would. To look at a large painting or sculpture, one must step away from it to take in everything about it. The opposite is true for these works. They beckon the viewer into an intimate meeting that only one person can engage in at a time. A crowd cannot truly admire these pieces from far away. Individuals must actively choose to engage with the artwork in close proximity to enjoy the rewards of the composition. This reality sets these pieces apart from the typical wonders of the Italian Renaissance, offering gems of artwork to the period. Properzia de Rossi was a gift to the art world both inside and outside of Italy. Who knows what opportunities her fame and talent created for other female artists during and after her lifetime. Her artistry not only made space for other female artists, but for artists excluded from the circle of fine art. Diamond cutters, metal workers, enamel workers, and other artists got to be involved in the making of such prestigious pieces that leave a special impact on the viewer. Properzia's work provides a view into what life may have been like for other women artists of the Renaissance, those named and unnamed. Though she was sorrowfully taken from the world very early, she left behind a portfolio that artists today might take a lifetime to accomplish. Vasari describes her as one of the greatest miracles of nature. What a perfect interpretation, for her artworks themselves cannot be described better than miracles. Thank you for your time.